Hello classmates and future CPAs, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Sa video na ito ay tuturuan ko kayo kung paano maging efficient sa pag-aaral ng management accounting, specifically financial analysis. Okay, dito sa management accounting or sa iba ay tinatawag din na management advisory services. Sa video ito, I want you to know or realize na ang accounting ay hindi lamang concepts. Kung di yun sapat na alam mo yung concepts, no? Kung wala kang diskarte sa pagsasagot, hindi ka magiging top-notcher or at worst, hindi ka papasa pa din sa CP board exam kasi mabagal kang magsagot. Okay, although alam mo yung concept, pero dahil limited nga yung time mo or yung meron tayong tinatawag na time constraint when it comes to accounting exam kasi may time limit lang yan. Either 2 hours, 1 hour, or 3 hours, diba? So you need to think of ways to be efficient and effective sa pagsasagot. So ngayon tuturuan ko kayo. Although this subject is hindi ko yan forte during the CPA board exam. Even yung college, nung undergrad ako, hindi ko alam masyado yung management accounting. Kaya nga ngayon, as much as possible, tuturuan ko kayo kung paano matutunan ang management accounting, specifically financial analysis. Okay? So, a quick appreciation lang ng financial analysis. Meron tayong kwento. Okay? So, si Kuya Jobert ay isang accounting student, no? Bumili siya sa tindahan nila Aling Marites. Ito siya, yung nasa picture. Okay? Sabi niya, Aling Marites, kumusta ka? Medyo malaki na yung rate of return of investments niyo doon sa inyong tindahan. Meron ba kayong Coke mismo? Sabi niya. Sabi naman ni Aling Marites, ay sa awa ng Diyos ay maraming bumibili dito. Okay? Sabi ni Kuya Jobert, based sa financial analysis ko, Aling Marites, malaki yung nagiging income nyo by 27% compared sa ibang negosyo dahil wala kayong binabayarang tax. Okay? Dahil you are considered a small business earner. Okay? Tapos dahil sa slogan nyo na walang utang ngayon, bukas meron, bumaba ang debt ratio nyo ngayong taon na lalong nagpalakas sa financial position nyo. Pero, para mag-grow itong tindahan nyo, dapat magkaroon kayo ng inventory system or simple inventory count at least monthly nang sa gayon hindi kayo magkakaubusan or hindi mauubusan ng supply ang tindahan nyo. Okay? Especially yung mga sigarilyo at alak, which is yung turnover niya is madali daw. Sabi na Aling Marites, wow, ang galing mo ah. Itong Coke mismo, nandito na, 16 pesos. Isama mo na rin itong panganay kong si Nenny. Okay, kasing edad lang daw kayo. Sa storyang ito, makikita natin na master na ni Kuya Jobert ang financial analysis. Sobrang talino nga na in-expect na ni Aling Marites na magsi-CPA siya. Binigay niya yung panganay niya sa kanya, di ba? So first, i-discuss muna natin ano yung financial analysis. Okay? From the presentation in itself, financial analysis, from the word itself, assess financials. Ina-assess natin yung financial statements, financial condition, financial position ng isang company. So, we assess financials. Financials, kung general term yan, it means the health, the status of the business. We assess the financial. Also, financial analysis examine projects. Hindi lang yung current na financials ni company. Pwede din niyang i-examine yung viability ng isang project or yung probability na mag-occur or mag-happen yung isang project or kailangan pa ba ng improvements, you will examine through financial analysis. Okay? The next one is evaluate budgets and forecast, no? Hindi lang tayo projects, hindi lang sa mga current financials natin. We also use financial analysis in forecasting or budgeting our expenditures or our annual plans and budgets, diba? So, financial analysis is a broad term, okay? Pero, in summary, it assesses or analyzes financials. Yun lang yun. Ina-analyze niya yung financials through yung mga formula ng financial analysis. Okay. Ngayon, alam mo na kung ano yung concept ng financial analysis from the word itself, analyze financials. Punta na tayo sa technique ng triangle method. So, in this video, I expect na meron ka ng background sa ituturo ko. Okay? Pero i-discuss pa rin natin one by one, little by little, for you to understand. Diba? So, triangle method tayo ng financial analysis. Hindi lahat ng formula sa financial analysis is applicable sa triangle method. Okay? Meron lang certain formulas which is yun yung mga usual na lumalabas sa CPA board exam. 'Di ba? Magagamit mo talaga to during your review and even pag-take mo na ng CPA board exam. Okay, triangle method number 1 tayo. Sa taas, meron tayong operating income. Dito naman sa may bandang baba, meron tayong net sales. And then dito is meron tayong average assets. Okay, if we divide operating income divided by the net sales, yung lalabas is return of sales. Diba? Operating income divided by net sales, yung lalabas is return on sale or ROS. ROS na lang yung ilalagay ko. Isulat nyo na lang sa notes nyo, return on sales. Pag sinabi natin return on sales, it measures the efficiency by which your assets are turned into profits. Your assets are turned into profits. Okay, operating income divided by net sales, it measures the efficiency of your sales relative to your profits. Okay, it provides valuable insight on how much profit you earn from every sales you generate. So, ilang income or ilang profit yung nakukuha mo sa every sale transaction na nagha-happen or nag-o-occur. Okay? Halimbawa, benta ka ngayong taon ng 500 worth of vehicles. Tapos yung net profit mo is 5 million and your net sales is 200 million. So we divide 5 million divided by 200 million to come up with return on sales. Magkano yung kinita mo in respect to your sales? Yun yung return on sales. Okay? I-divide naman natin yung operating income divided by average assets. Yung lalabas is ROA. Hindi yan si Digo nga. ROA. Return on assets. Okay? Return on assets. A return on assets is a profitability ratio that provides how much profit a company is able to generate from its assets. Kaya nga tinatawag na return on assets. How much profits are generated through your assets. Okay? Yun yung return on assets. I-note nyo na lang kasi hindi ko na isusulat dito sa presentation. Okay? Net sales. Net sales divided by average assets yung lalabas is asset turnover. Okay, asset turnover or ATO. Okay, yung ibang tawag dito is ATO, asset turnover. Asset turnover, it measures the efficiency of how well a company uses its assets to produce sales. Okay? Ano yung benefit ng mga assets mo para makaproduce ng sales? Okay? So, the higher, the better. Pag asset turnover, kasi mas marami kang asset na income generating, mas lalakas yung asset turnover mo, which is better para sa company. Okay? The lower the ratio naman, meaning yung assets mo are not effective or not efficient, di ba? It might due to production, baka nasosobrahan sa production, okay? Baka walang maintenance. Yun yung nangyayari sa asset turnover. Okay? So, sa triangle method natin ngayon, tuturuan ko kayo kung paano makuha yung mga formulas na ito using the triangle. Number 1, yung asset turnover, yung return of sales, yung return on assets, interconnected yan sila kasi nasa loob sila ng isang triangle. Okay? Diba? Yung pag-analyze natin dito is clockwise pag ganito siya. Parang, ano natin, yung mga clock natin, di ba? Clockwise yan. Di ba? So, from asset turnover to return on sales, return on asset, babalik-balik lang yung formula niya dito. So, let's start. Okay? So, unahin muna natin yung pagkuha ng asset turnover. Okay? Pagkuha ng asset turnover, you will divide return on sales over return on assets para makuha mo yung asset turnover. Maliwanag? Okay, so clockwise siya, di ba? Papunta siyang clockwise kasi from here, you divide return on sales over your return on assets. Yung lalabas, asset turnover. Okay, next. If you will find return on sales, you will just divide return on assets over your asset turnover. Okay? And to come up with return on assets, you will just multiply naman. Multiply asset turnover over the return of sales. Okay? Asset turnover times return on sales, you will get return on assets. Okay? So, madali lang. Clockwise, and then here, always multiply. Pag nandito sa left side or sa left ng equation ng triangle, it is always multiply. Yung the other are divided. Okay? So, paano kunin yung return on assets? Asset turnover times return on sales. Paano kunin yung asset turnover? Return on sales over return on assets. Okay? Paano kunin yung return on sales? Return on assets over asset turnover. Okay? Madali lang, di ba? You will just play on your triangle. Yun lang yung method dito. Okay, next. Next na tayo. So, alam nyo na kaagad yung triangle method number 1, okay? Laging lumalabas yan sa CPA board exam. So, punta tayo sa triangle method number 2, which is same pa din, operating income divided by average assets divided by average equity. Okay? Operating income divided by average equity, or operating income divided by average assets, or average assets divided by average equity. Ano yung lalabas? So, una, yung lalabas is average assets over average equity. Yung lalabas is equity multiplier. So, ulit na lang nyo, equity multiplier or financial leverage. Equity multiplier is a measure of a portion of company's assets that is financed by stock, or rather than, ano yung kabaliktaran or the other way around ng equity? Liability. Okay? So dito, equity multiplier o financial leverage, mini-measure niya yung portion ng average ng asset mo na financed by equity or stocks, di ba? Yun yung financial leverage or equity multiplier. So, madali lang, di ba? It highlights the company's use or utilization of stocks. Okay? Kasi pinili niyang pondohan yung kanyang mga assets through the stocks, issuance of stocks rather than pag-uutang. 'Di ba? So, depende yan, yung pag-analyze mo ng equity multiplier, depende sa industry or depende sa kanyang mga competitors, yung kanyang mga other businesses similar to that company. Yun yung pag-analyze ng equity multiplier. Usually, by industry yan, di ba? So, next, if you divide operating income over average assets, yung lalabas pa rin is return on assets. Diniscuss na natin yan kanina. Return on assets, how much of your profits is generated through your assets, di ba? Ano yung nagiging gamit or nagiging importance ng mga assets mo? Nakaka-generate ba siya ng profits? How much or by what percentage? Yun yung return on assets. Diba? And then yung pinaka-last is return on equity. We divide operating income divided by average equity. Yung lalabas return on equity. Okay, return on equity. Equity from the word itself, shareholders equity equals to assets minus liabilities, di ba? Return on equity is considered return on net assets, okay? It measures the company's profitability in relations to its equity, okay? Ano yung profitability ni company as of the year compared or relative to its equity. Okay? Dito, ina-analyze ng mga investors kung it is worthy to invest in your stocks, di ba? Or in your company. Is it worthy to buy stocks? Kasi maliit lang yung equity ROE mo, better dun kami sa mas malaking ROE. So, depende yun sa pag-a-analyze ni investors or ni company. Okay? So, sa triangle method, clockwise ulit tayo. Triangle method number 2. Unahin na muna natin yung pagkuha ng equity multiplier or financial leverage. You just divide ulit return on assets divided by return on equity. Lalabas equity multiplier or financial leverage. Okay? So, madali lang, diba? Paano naman kung kukunin natin yung return on assets? So, return on assets, yung pagkuha is you just divide return on equity divided by equity multiplier. So, dalawa na yung method ng pagkuha natin ng return on assets. Yung kanina, we just multiply asset turnover tapos yung return on sales, 'di ba? Makukuha natin yung return on assets. So dito naman return on equity divided by equity multiplier or financial leverage, yung lalabas is return on assets. So dalawa na yung formula natin. Okay, how about if you find the value of return or you find the return on equity, you just multiply equity multiplier by the return on assets. So, equity multiplier or financial leverage times return on assets, yung lalabas is return on equity. So, this is the application of the DuPont formula. In-expound ko lang into graphical formula para mas maintindihan natin, mas ma-picture out natin yung relation ng bawat isa. Okay? So, paano pagkuha ng return on equity? You just multiply equity multiplier times return on assets. Paano pagkuha ng equity multiplier? you just divide return on assets by return on equity. Paano ba kuha ng return on assets? Return on equity divided by equity multiplier. So next, triangle method number 3. Bago naman yung triangle method neto, we are using dividend per share sa taas, earnings per share sa baba, market price per share sa baba. Okay? So, dividend per share, market price per share, earnings per share. So, earnings per share divided by market price per share, we will come up to price-earning ratio. But first, paano pagkuha ng earnings per share? Yung earnings per share is a portion of the company's profits. So, yung formula ng earnings per share is net income minus preferred dividends divided by average common stock outstanding. So, average common shares. Yun yung earnings per share. Okay? So, market price per share, yun yung last price na nabenta. Usually, wala tong formula kasi ito yung price, last price niya dito. Okay? So, yun yung market price per share. Price earning ratio or price earnings ratio, also known as PER or PE or PER, diba? Or PE ratio, is the ratio of the company's share price to company's earnings per share. Okay? The ratio is used to value companies where their stocks are overvalued or undervalued. Okay, yun yung price earnings ratio. So, you just divide earnings per share over market price per share. Next is dividend payout ratio. Okay, dividend per share divided by earnings per share. Dividends per share is the annual dividends. You just divide by the share outstanding. So, annual dividends divided by common stock outstanding. Okay? Annual dividends divided by common stock outstanding, lalabas yung dividends per share. Divided by your earnings per share, yung lalabas is dividend payout ratio. Okay? It is the ratio how much dividends are paid to stockholders relative to its income. Okay? Instances kasi na yung company, sa dami ng kanyang utang, yung DPR is almost at 0%. Okay? Kasi lahat ng income niya napupunta lang sa pagbabayad ng utang. Therefore, there is no dividend. So, last is dividend yield. Dividend yield, dividend per share divided by market price per share. Yun yung dividend yield. It's a financial ratio that shows how much the company pays out or pays out in dividend each year relative to its stock price. Okay? Mini-measure na how much or by what percentage our dividends is relative to our market price. Okay? Yun yung mga gamit ng mga investors na mga formula to come up with the dividend yield. Okay? So, punta tayo sa triangle method. If we are to find out the price earnings ratio, we just divide dividend payout ratio by dividend yield. So, DPR over dividend yield, yung lalabas is price earnings ratio. Okay? So, next, kung kunin naman natin yung dividend payout ratio, we just divide dividend yield by price earnings ratio. Okay? And the last is, paano natin makukuha yung dividend yield? We just multiply price earnings ratio times the dividend payout ratio. Yun yung dividend yield natin. Okay? So, clockwise ulit tayo. Tapos, dito sa left side, always multiply lang. Dito sa taas and sa right side, always yan divided by. Okay? So, triangle method number 4. Average liabilities sa taas, average assets sa left side, and then sa right side natin is average equity. Okay? To come up with average equity multiplier, which is diniscuss na natin kanina, same as the leverage ratio, pareho lang yan sila. We just divide average assets over average equity. So, umulit na ulit tayo, inulit na natin to. So, equity multiplier, how much of your assets are financed by equity or stocks, di ba? So, yun yung leverage ratio or equity multiplier. So, debt ratio, common na common yan, debt ratio. Pag sinabing debt ratio, average liabilities over average asset. You must not be confused of the debt to equity kasi iba yan, di ba? So, unahin na muna natin yung debt ratio. Yung debt ratio, shows the overall debt burden of the company. Okay? Ano kalaki na yung utang natin over our average assets? Paano if mabankrupt tayo? Mababayaran ba lahat ng liabilities through our assets? Yun yung debt ratio. Okay? Debt to equity ratio, average liabilities over average equity. Okay, also called debt equity or risk ratio or gearing ratio. Risk ratio or gearing ratio, pareho lang yan sila sa debt to equity. Okay, it is a leverage ratio kasi it indicates the level of debt incurred by the business over its equity. So, we are here to have the formula. So, equity multiplier ulit, kukunin mo yung value ng equity multiplier or leverage ratio, you just divide debt ratio over debt to equity ratio. Yung lalabas, equity multiplier. So, paano naman kunin yung debt ratio? We just divide debt to equity ratio by our equity multiplier as our denominator. Okay? So, paano kunin yung debt to equity ratio? We just multiply equity multiplier or leverage ratio by our debt ratio. Yun yung debt to equity. Okay, ulitin natin. Equity multiplier, debt ratio as our numerator, debt to equity as our denominator. So, we will divide. Okay, paano kunin yung debt ratio? Debt to equity ratio as our numerator, equity multiplier as our denominator. So, you will divide. Yung lalabas is debt ratio. Okay? So, problem number 1, find return on equity on MANNY PACQUIAO Incorporated. We have leverage ratio 2.2, total asset turnover 2.0, we have net profit margin of 5.5%, and we have dividend payout ratio of 31.8%. Ano yung return on equity? So, at first, you will be confused. Paano ba answeran ito? Paano ba sagutan ito? But if you know the triangle method, it will be easier. Here's the problem sample solution. So, meron daw tayong leverage ratio na 2.2, meron tayong total asset turnover na 2.0, meron tayong net profit margin na 5.5. First is, we must know the return on assets, di ba? We must know the value of the return on assets. So, how will we come up to know the value of return on assets? Using the triangle method, we will just multiply 2.0 times 5.5%. So, yung lalabas dito na return on assets natin is, punta tayo sa calculator. So, magkano yan? 5.5%. 0.05 0.055 times 2.0. Ang lalabas is 11%. So, meron na kaagad tayong return on assets which is 11, ang hirap magsulat, 11%. So, at 11%, yung return on assets natin, meron din tayong leverage ratio na 2.2. Ano yung hinahanap sa problem? Return on equity. So, we will now get the value of return on equity. So, we will just multiply ulit leverage ratio or equity multiplier na 2.2 times 11% to get the return on equity. So, yung lalabas is 24.2% if we will multiply the leverage ratio by our return on assets. So, ito na yung lalabas. Madali lang. Return on equity, 24.2%. Bongbong Marcos Incorporated has return on equity of 18.74%, equity multiplier of 1.6, and a profit margin of 17.75%. What is the total asset turnover? Round your answers to two decimal places. Have the solution. We have return on equity, 18.74%, equity multiplier or financial leverage of 1.6, net profit margin of 17.75%. We will just find the value of return on assets. So, return on assets, or ROA. To find the value of ROA, we will just divide our return on equity divided by equity multiplier. So, if we will divide the return on equity over our equity multiplier, yung lalabas na ROA is 11.7125%. So, 11.7125%, yun yung ROA natin. So, meron na tayong ROA. Kunin na lang natin yung asset turnover. So, yung asset turnover, which is hinahanap ng problem, makukuha na natin yung value. So, we will just divide net profit margin of 17.75% divided by our 11.7125% para lumabas yung asset turnover. Okay, yung asset turnover is 1.51. So, 1.51 na yung final answer natin. Okay? Yun na yung sagot sa problem, diba?